Hajime Isayama's Attack on Titan is undeniably one of the biggest series in the world right now. Since its release in 2009, Attack on Titan has become nothing short of a media juggernaut, with a critically acclaimed anime receiving international praise and manga sales surpassing 100 million copies. It's made a clear name for itself as one of the most influential series in the industry. By weaving together complex storylines, dynamic characters, and visual symbolism, Attack on Titan draws meaningful connections between its visual and narrative elements, creating a more impactful and immersive experience for the audience. In this video, I will primarily be focusing on symbolism within Season 4 of the anime, but I'll also be delving into other themes present throughout the series and through the end of the manga. This is your manga spoiler warning. And with that, let's get on with the video. Openings are an important part of any anime, and Attack on Titan uses its own openings for more than just a fun display of our favorite characters. I'll be using the Season 4 opening as a guide for my analysis, but this video will be discussing elements of visual symbolism found throughout the series as a whole. Immediately after the disappearance of the title, we are met with flashes of colorful explosions, a stark contrast to the gray war zone they destroy. One interpretation could be that these colors are working to distract the viewer from the horrors of war. Instead of seeing death and destruction, we are captivated by the beauty of the explosions as if they were a firework display. However, these explosions also lead to one of the most important forms of visual symbolism throughout Attack on Titan, the power of the Titans. As the colorful explosions cut and morph to the shape of Titan attacks and transformations, we are able to see the link between the terrors of war, particularly that of nuclear weapons in World War II, and the Titan powers possessed by the Eldians. After years of war with the world, the Eldian king Karl Fritz evacuated the people of Eldia to the island of Paradis. He used the power of the founding Titan to control millions of colossal Titans in the construction of the three large concentric walls, Maria, Rose, and Sheena, around the last remaining territory of Eldia, so the subjects of Ymir could finally live in true peace. Once the walls were completed, Fritz gave an ultimatum to the outside world. If any act of war was committed against the remnants of Eldia, the tens of millions of colossal Titans within the walls would be unleashed upon the world to flatten the earth in the cataclysmic event known as the Rumbling. The Rumbling was initially threatened by Fritz and later used by Eren Jaeger to deter the world from attacking the island of Paradis. This is similar to how the effects of nuclear weapons and the threat of a third bombing forced Imperial Japan to finally surrender in World War II, later giving birth to the idea of nuclear deterrence during the Cold War. The transformation of the colossal Titan can release an immense amount of heat and energy, resulting in devastating destruction as well as a mushroom cloud much like the kind formed after the detonation of nuclear weapons. During the raid on Liberia, Armin transforms into the colossal Titan, destroying the Marley and Navy fleet and much of the surrounding area. After the port is destroyed, Armin exits his Titan form and looks on in stunned silence at the destruction before him. He asks if this is the view Bertholdt saw years ago when he attacked Shiganshina. His expression and feelings regarding his actions harken back to those of Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer, one of the developers of the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer felt immense guilt after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and believed that even though they were acts of war, they were not ethical and that because of his involvement, there was blood on his hands. In a 1965 interview, Oppenheimer talked about his thoughts on the atomic bomb and the guilt that plagued him after it was used.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
While Titan powers, specifically those of the colossal Titan, can be linked to the destructive power of the atom bomb, the warrior's attack on Shiganshina also bears a strong thematic likeness to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. A supposed quote from the Japanese admiral Isoroku Yamamoto regarding the effects of the attack is even adapted in one of the final chapters of the manga. In response to the United States reaction, Yamamoto said, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." In chapter 134, In the Depths of Despair, The Marleyan military of Fort Salta is launching a last-ditch attack on the Rumbling's colossal titans in an attempt to stop their flattening of the earth. Before commanding the release of the airship's bombs, the commander addresses the Marleyan soldiers and Eldian refugees of the fort, saying, "This is humanity's last fort. The responsibilities of the soldiers are enormous, but no matter the outcome, they are not just the soldiers. They are us adults' responsibilities. We used hate, raised hate, believed hate to be our savior. We left all the problems we created on the island of the devils, and as a result, that devil was born to return the hate we gave it. If I were given another chance, I swear not to make the same mistakes. If humanity still exists tomorrow, I hope you will swear to do the same. I hope to end this era of hate, start an era of peace, and part ways with our monsters." At this time, the commander acknowledges that Marley's actions against the island of Parody have directly led to this moment, awakening the literal and metaphorical sleeping giant of the Rumbling, much like how Pearl Harbor sparked the United States' involvement in World War II. The marching soldiers wearing Marleyan uniforms allude to the upcoming war Parody will face against Marley. These soldiers carry guns instead of ODM gear and blades, once again reminding the viewer that the fight has shifted from titans to humanity. These scenes are also reminiscent of historical footage from Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan during World War II, which introduces more of Marley's references to the Axis powers. Themes of war and destruction continue as we are met with flashes of soldiers crumbling and powerful explosions demolishing walled cities and military warships. The destruction of the walls foreshadows the Rumbling, which leads to the freedom of Parody, but comes with the loss of the isolation they've experienced for over 100 years prior. It also refers to the destruction of Marley, most notably representing the walls surrounding the Eldian internment zone of Liberio. The walls of Liberio also create a contrast to the walls of Parody. For the people of Parody, the walls were their only defense from the outside world and the titans that roam the island. However, for Eldians in Liberio, the walls represent oppression rather than protection. They are separated from the rest of society and forced to live within the internment zone, where leaving is prohibited, similar to how internment and concentration camps were used during World War II. Marley is full of World War II imagery and symbolism, particularly with how its portrayal heavily resembles that of Nazi Germany. Not only do Marleyans force Eldians to live within internment zones, they also created the Warrior Unit, which allows Eldian youth to potentially obtain honorary Marleyan citizenship for themselves and their families by acting as Titan soldiers aligned with the Marleyan military. Much like the children in the Hitler Youth, warrior candidates were indoctrinated with propaganda and expected to follow orders from their superiors without question. Both warrior Titan shifters and Hitler Youth wore red armbands on their left arm and were viewed as ensuring the future of their respective countries. They believed in the importance of sacrifice for the cause, and their education and training programs were designed to undermine the values of their respective opposing ideologies. While the warriors differ from the Hitler Youth in that they are made up of members of the oppressed rather than the oppressor, they still serve an analogous purpose. It is important to note that both the Hitler Youth and Warrior Unit served as child soldiers in their respective wars, and the intense pressure on the members of both groups forced them to put the beliefs of their nation above any personal ties or moral qualms they may possess. Hitler Youth were obligated to turn in those who opposed the Nazi regime regardless of their relationship with them. We see this mirrored in Attack on Titan when Zeke is confronted by Dr. Xiver about what will happen if his Eldian restorationist parents are discovered. Zeke is given an ultimatum. By staying silent about his parents' beliefs, he'd be risking everyone, including himself and his grandparents, being sent to Parody to be turned into pure Titans. If he turned them in, he could spare his grandparents and secure his status in Marley's eyes as a loyal warrior. After some thought, Zeke decided to turn his parents in. They were sent to Parody, where they were turned into Titans, and Zeke won the favor of Marleyan officials, helping him to later secure his status as the next inheritor of the Beast Titan. There are 4 different colored armbands that can be worn depending on an Eldian status. Grayish-brown armbands are worn by civilians, gray are worn by soldiers, yellow are given to warrior candidates, and red armbands are reserved for warriors and other honorary Marleyans. These armbands share a strong likeness to those worn by the Hitler Youth, as well as those forced upon Jewish individuals across Europe, though the historical symbolism goes much deeper than just the armband itself. If we take a closer look at the insignia on the armbands, the Eldian star bears a strong resemblance to the Star of David, present on Jewish armbands and patches during the Holocaust. However, it also bears a strong resemblance to the Edelweiss flower, with which it shares symbolic meaning. Due to the flower's pure white coloring and its ability to grow in harsh mountain conditions, it became a symbol of courage and noble purity. During World War II, the Edelweiss and its symbolism was also adopted by the Edelweiss Pirates, a youth group who opposed Nazi rule and in particular rebelled against the way the Hitler Youth took away young people's freedom during this time. This parallels the goal of the Eldian restorationists working within Marley and their goal of Eldian freedom. It is also interesting to note that the German word edel, meaning noble, is similar in pronunciation to Eldia. This connection makes sense given the narrative importance of the bloodlines of the subjects of Ymir, particularly those with royal blood, as they are able to use the full powers of the founding Titan, but are bound by Fritz's renouncement of war. The emblem of Marley appears to be a seashell and is found on several structures located in Liberia, as well as official military paperwork. The shell has 7 sections, which happens to coincide with the number of Titans Marley initially gained during the Great Titan War. The original Japanese name for Marley, mare, also bears a strong resemblance in pronunciation to the Latin word mare, meaning sea. This terminology matches with Marley's seashell motif and also ties Marley to Armin's dream of reaching the sea, as well as Eren's dream to defeat his enemies. Birds falling from the sky are often seen as an ominous warning. Many birds are sentinel species, meaning they are particularly sensitive to the presence of environmental toxins. A well-known example of this is how canaries were used in coal mines during the early 20th century, due to the fact that they were more sensitive to the colorless, odorless carbon monoxide and other poisonous gases than humans were. If the animal became ill or died, this gave the miners a warning to evacuate. The falling carcasses of the birds in the opening can be interpreted to represent the scouts who have died fighting up until this point, as well as those who will meet their end in the near future. Later in the opening, Titans fall from the sky in the same manner as the birds, representing the loss of Eldian soldiers' freedom to the forces of Marley. This also foreshadows Zeke turning Eldian soldiers into pure Titans during their battle in the Mid-East, a scene which is reminiscent of not only Erwin's suicidal charge in the end of Season 3, but also the fighting strategies of kamikaze pilots. Because of their ability to soar freely in the sky, birds are often used to represent freedom, and this is a theme that is present throughout the entirety of Attack on Titan. Birds are shown repeatedly through the series and are heavily linked to the characters' fights for freedom. This is most obvious when thinking about the Wings of Freedom emblem worn by the Survey Corps. As a group that repeatedly ventures outside the walls, or outside the birdcage, the wings have an empowering meaning behind them. Even as a child, when Eren sees them on the back of the scouts, he automatically thinks of freedom. We see the symbolism of birds reflected in other characters as well. While Armin's dreams of freedom were connected to reaching the ocean beyond the walls, when the scouts finally do reach the sea, there are seagulls that can be seen flying around the area. In chapter 131, Armin talks to Annie about his and Eren's dreams of freedom, and once again a seagull is seen as it perches on the railing behind them. This motif continues in chapter 139, while Armin stands on the bow of a ship, reflecting on how drastically the world has changed over the last few years. He watches as a bird flies away, catching a fallen feather in his hand while promising to tell the truth of their fight for freedom, as well as their newfound quest for peace. Beyond just his name being derived from falcon, the symbol of the bird also has strong ties to Falco's character. During episode 1 of season 4, Falco is wounded on the battlefield, and as he gazes to the sky, a bird can be seen flying around above him. He remarks that the bird should fly away since it has wings, and we later see the bird flying away to the direction opposite the battlefield. This creates an interesting parallel between the two, as one falcon is shackled to the earth, while the other is able to soar freely in the sky. Falco's personal fight for freedom later manifests itself in his Titan form. The Titan form of Titan shifters has been seen to be influenced by the thoughts and feelings of each individual. Examples of this include Dr. Xyver's Titan form being lamb-like, as he was more interested in Titan research than war, whereas Zeke needed to excel as a warrior to enact his euthanasia plan, and his Titan was much more battle-oriented. Zeke's Titan form even resembled a monkey plush that he played with as a child. Armin's colossal Titan form was much kinder and somber-looking compared to Bertholdt's aggressive Titan form. Armin's Titan also lacks ears, which is a result of Armin's displeasure with war and how he does not want to hear the death of his victims. When Falco first transforms into a pure Titan in chapter 119, he looks very similar to a baby bird. However, it is when he inherits the power of the Jaw Titan that we begin to truly see his avian qualities. During his first transformation as a Titan shifter in chapter 129, his Titan form has already begun to take on its bird-like features. He has a thick, blunt beak and scaly hands with talons resembling those found on birds of prey. after his second transformation as a Titan shifter in chapter 135, his Titan form is fully avian, complete with a fully formed beak, wings, and the ability to fly. During the Battle of Heaven and Earth, Titans begin to surround those fighting to stop Eren. Growing desperate, Mikasa prepares to make a last stand against the Titans. However, Falco's winged Titan form suddenly appears and whisks the group away at a pace too swift for the encroaching Titans to catch. As the Titan flies them to safety, the confused soldiers are greeted by Annie. What's interesting about this panel in particular is that it is composed so that Mikasa is in front of Falco's wings, given the appearance that Mikasa herself has wings. This panel has several symbolic meanings relating to Mikasa's freedom. Not only does it further symbolize the wings of freedom that the scouts have worn on their uniforms thus far, most notably on their capes where the insignia is displayed across their backs, but it also represents how Mikasa is fighting for the freedom of the world by trying to stop Eren in the rumbling. Additionally, at this point in the story, Mikasa has found her own freedom from her romantic feelings for Eren, as she also fights the effects of the Armin bond, which causes her to want to protect Eren before all others. Finally, Mikasa is later revealed to be the one who frees Ymir from her love for and bond to Karl Fritz, which in the end stopped the rumbling and saved the remaining world from being annihilated. Eren's driving goal throughout the series was wanting to be free. This started with his wish to rid the world of Titans so humanity could finally know peace, though this goal soon changed after learning about the hatred held by those outside of parity. Because of this, he vowed to once again move forward until he killed all his enemies and Eldians were free from the oppression of the world. However, because of Ymir's influence, Eren could not have the freedom he initially dreamed of. In the end, he was no longer able to think clearly, as a combination of the past and present future memories in his head made him incapable of distinguishing what was past, present, and future. It was this warped perspective of time that caused him to ensure history played out the way he remembered it. This led to him becoming a threat to the entire world so that the scouts could kill him, and in doing so earn the favor of the world. Since Eren succeeded in wiping out 80% of the world's population, he was able to secure Parity's freedom for the foreseeable future, as no other nation would be able to launch a counterattack anytime soon. But this freedom came with a price. Even with the power of the founding Titan on his side, because of the atrocities he committed, Eren knew he wouldn't be able to experience the freedom he so desperately fought for, as the world would never be able to forgive him. This led to Eren becoming a sacrifice for his own cause. In the final chapter of the manga, Mikasa is seen wearing the scarf Eren wrapped around her as a child after he saved her from the traffickers who killed her parents. During the fight against the Smiling Titan, he said he would continue wrapping that scarf around her as long as she needs. The last panels of chapter 139 show a bird tugging on Mikasa's scarf as she is visiting Eren's grave. She cries as she admits she wishes she could see him again and thanks him for wrapping the scarf around her as the bird flies away. The series ends with Mikasa's thank you and Eren's symbolic form of the bird finally reaching his freedom in the skies. Attack on Titan has become one of, if not the most defining anime of this generation, and it's clear to see why. Because Isayama creates such strong connections between real-world symbolism and narrative elements, he's able to weave together an experience that draws the audience in and builds a multitude of layers within the plot. It is by keeping narrative elements so deeply rooted in reality that he's able to keep the complex plot from collapsing under its own weight and falling into a one-dimensional storyline, as so many other series have done before. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and feel free to leave any thoughts or questions you have in the comments below.